Welcome to this edition of News Briefing for the FSB in Beds, Cams and Hearts. Time now to meet another of our MPs in the region, and this time it's the turn of Stephen McPartland, and he is the Conservative member for Stevenage. I spoke with him earlier and asked him what he was doing for small businesses in his constituency.
One of the most important things that I actually do is listen to small businesses in my constituency. I go out and I visit small businesses in the constituency every single week, and I listen to the problems and the challenges that they're facing. And although many of them are very different challenges that would face people in a normal working life, problems getting to work, problems with parking, a huge variety of issues, I take all of those issues up with the relevant organisations, and I just try to make it easier to do business in Stevenage.
Now, of course, as you well know, Stevenage is home to many large companies like GSK, Astrium, Fujitsu and the like. Do they procure their goods and services locally?
Well, I'm incredibly proud of the large businesses we have in Stevenage. We have Glaxo's largest R&D facility in Europe. We build 25% of the world's telecommunications satellites. We build complex weapons systems. We have the IET headquartered here, Fujitsu you mentioned. There's a huge range of high technology businesses which are here in Stevenage, which we're very proud of. And what many people are very surprised about is actually 96% of businesses in Stevenage have a turnover of less than £1 million. So Stevenage is actually far more small business orientated than people realise. And we do a huge amount of work with those large companies to try and integrate them into the local supply chain. And most of those companies would dispute the findings that they're not involved in the local supply chain. So they try to work very closely with the local community and with local businesses.
And staying with procurement, what about the local council?
That's quite difficult for us because the actual local council, Stevenage Borough Council, they've given figures in the last week to say that they actually only procure 14.5% of their services in the town. The other 86.5% goes outside of the town. This is something that causes small businesses locally a real problem. It's a real pain. It's something that winds them up a great deal. We're going to be pushing the council quite hard to do this. We've got a whole range of facilities and issues going on in some campaigns, and I'm hopeful that the council will listen to small business, because at the moment small businesses feel as though the council is just this body on the side that takes money off them and never gives anything in return.
Now, at the moment, all the indicators are that the recovery is happening, but many small businesses are still having problems with the banks.
There is a real issue with banking and loans, and I work with many of the local banks, and I know most of the local business advisors, and we do talk to them about that at the moment. Even today, already I'm dealing with an issue of a small business who's finding it difficult to access cash off a local bank. So we're in talks with the bank already. We'll get the business in front of a decision maker within the bank, and we'll see what we can do. But there is a real issue with this. If you speak to the banks, they give me all these wonderful statistics and figures about they've never given so much more money away in Stevenage as they do at the moment. They're desperately trying to lend as much as they can. But the reality is, it seems to be they're happy to lend money to those businesses that don't need it.
What about all the red tape? Are you able to do anything about that down in Westminster?
Well, I'm always ready to get rid of red tape. The government launched a red tape challenge, and I tried to get all my local businesses to contribute towards that red tape challenge, identify the bits of red tape that irritate them mostly.
Stevenage is doing pretty well compared to other parts of the country. Have you got any tips for other places that are struggling?
I think you've got to get involved. Nobody's going to do it for you. So, for example, I do a huge amount of work with the colleges and the schools around apprentices and local businesses, and we try to make it easy for a small business to take on an apprentice. I've been in talks with a bank recently about them actually doing all the paperwork for a small business if they did take on an apprentice and they were one of their customers. And as a result of that, we're on course this year for almost 1,000 apprentices being started here in Stevenage, which will be amongst the highest in the UK. I'm delighted with the number of apprentices that we have here, and people always say, what's being an apprentice? Well, here in Stevenage, I have apprentice rocket scientists because we're building satellites. I have apprentice accountants. I have apprentice solicitors, apprentice car manufacturers, people involved in car maintenance. We have everything, and we even have level 5 apprentices in some of our companies, and that means that the apprenticeship's the equivalent to a degree.
Stephen McPartland MP, and that concludes this edition of News Briefing for the FSB. See you again soon.